We've got three
Yep. So
that are all awesome, and we've
there's a three being offered. There's one or two.
considering creating a special advisory role.
Who's behind me?
Food specialists that would take the budget that we've got anyway. Yeah,
Oh, and then
because they're so good.
But I mean, excellent. Experience of it.
Areas in two places at once.
yeah, it's always got some.
That's right. Sorry.
Gary's still struggling with IT.
Oh, okay.
Start with some intros after that.
Perfect. All right.
So, no, this is the workshop everyone's been waiting for.
It's chocolates. Liberty cheap.
Some people don't know the secrets of the chocolates.
So we've got
Haley, she's
Jones.
off like a shot.
Got somebody right last night.
So for those of you who were around back in 2019-20, we did a full review of our revenue and financing policy, and Philip Jones here helped us along with that. So he's back again to the next round, which has come about through a resolution through the 3-year plan where council directed officers to undertake a review of the revenue and financing policy in this financial year for it to take effect from 1st of July next year. And so we've got Gareth here and Alistair as well, who are going to take control of part of the presentation. So we'll just start off with covering off what we're actually required to do for the review under the Act, and take a look at the various funding tools that we use to fund activities and the type of rating mechanisms that we are available to us. We'll confirm the processes for resolving some of the issues that we identified at the last workshop. And that includes looking at land value versus capital value as the basis for rating. Alistair's going to cover off where our activities currently sit against policy, so where they're currently sitting, whether they're compliant with public-private funding splits, and we'll go through the ones that we've identified that we update. And then we'll take guidance from you to go away and model some scenarios to bring back to the next workshop in August. And then we'll also take you through the next steps and timeline for the review. So I'll hand over to Philip.
Oh, thank you. Right. What do you do? I have to do next.
Don't worry, I'm on it.
You're on it? Oh, no, next slide, please, then.
Yeah.
As you can see, Gary and I worked together quite well, right, for quite some time. So, oh, by the way, for those elected members only, sorry, Louise, right? and yes, right? I should actually have that. I've got for the new elected members since 2020. I've got I wouldn't say a split personality, but I do two different roles in local government, right? So one is I work with officers doing finance, strategic finance, revenue and financing policies. And where Louise and I first met was actually I chair a number of audit and risk committees, including CIPAS.
Going despite that.
I'm a sucker for punishment. I like a good challenge. I actually, for those who can't remember, I was chief bean counter many years ago at Western Bay Plenty District Council, where I did a whole lot of what I thought was good work. The fact that they've invited me back to review what's happened over the last 5 or 6 years and to pass my comments, probably this doesn't stop. So, but anyway, so that's a little bit about me. I actually live in the other bay, so don't hold that against me. But I said if Tauranga ever sank, I'd come and live here. But the problem is, if I was to move here, then I'd become a single man. Some people say that's probably a good idea. Right, so that's...
Your wife.
Sorry? Okay.
For me.
Right, so for good crunchy comments, I do have some mini crunchy bars. And for some golden comments, I have got Hokey Pokey Whittaker's Golden Hokey Pokey. And then I've got flakes. No? So, you know, let's, and I should say, sorry?
Deja vu.
Absolutely. Well, I did another workshop for another council, would be about 2 or 3 months ago. I did a workshop with that council 12 years ago. And there were 3 or 4 councillors who participated in my workshops 12 years ago. And the minute I walk in the door, they say, "Oh, Philip, where are the chocolates?" So I'm also known as a chocolate man. So
It got smaller though. They got smaller than they did last time. But we
You
won't
can
blame you.
blame Cadbury and Whittaker's for that.
yeah, I mean, I've now got Whittaker's, so I've gone slightly up market for the golden ones. Before I had Moro Gold.
Just released a new one today. Have you got those?
If it's been released today, considering I bought them yesterday, no.
I'll say they're old.
What's the new one? Because what's the new flavour?
Oh, I can't say, but it was on stuff this morning.
Has it been?
Was it?
What if
Off it?
diabetic?
Yeah.
I think it's been.
Well, if you're diabetic, check your glucose levels. And if you need a sugar, absolutely.
Can I just quickly advise, we've still got 11 months worth of work to go with this, so just pace yourself, please.
No. We need to. Sorry, Gary.
May not be here.
There's a big event in that area.
I'm pleased that the banter has not reduced since I've been around this table. I would say that, yes, Gary, yes, we want it implemented and operative by 1 July. So it's, you know, it probably, and you need to consult as part of the next annual plan. So really, we've probably only got, and that's why we actually need this workshop now, is so you can recommend to the new council what your preferred option is and the rationale for it. I think if we tried to do that potentially back in 2019, of course, we had a little worldwide event which sort of constrained moving forward. So anyway, that's so basically, and those of you who can't sleep between 2 and 3 in the morning, here's some bedtime reading. Section 101 talks about being prudent, right? So this is the whole Local Government Act, I think, is in this area has actually been written back to front. It should actually start with section 101 because that actually then talks about the principles. And basically what we need to be is we need to be prudent. So what does it actually mean, team? Come on, here's your first opportunity. We need to be prudent in our financial, right? 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 And it's financial in the second paragraph, in the second line, in general financial, right, must be prudent. So what is actually, who is prudence?
Blonde girl down the road, isn't she?
Sorry?
A little blonde girl from down the road.
Being prudent means to budget and manage your money carefully. People that are prudent are very careful with their money. That's how I was.
Careful, sensible and wise.
What's the Oxford Dictionary say? Anyone Google that?
Oh, that's on.
Prudence is the ability to govern and discipline yourself by the use of reason,
Reason.
making wise decisions by carefully considering the possible consequences of your actions.
That's the last bit I like, right? It's the right. It's consider, right? It's taking a considered view. And again, prudence, naturally, you think it's careful and considered. If you got to share it, mate.
It's your chocolate.
I gave it to you.
It's my chocolate.
What do you reckon, team?
Like,
Sorry? Got a flake?
yeah.
I can't throw, right? I'm likely to half that down. Steve.
Safety.
Right. See? No, that's worse than I.
No, mine level.
So one of the things too here
Wasn't a cricket ball.
that the decisions we make, well, we won't be making any formal decisions, but the recommendations we will be making to the new council shouldn't be short term. So basically, what concerns me, and I won't name some councils, they're making some very short-term decisions as part of their revenue and financing policy. And I can't comment on that because I sit on the Audit and Risk Committee. So they're actually making decisions based on what's actually happening now, not what is potentially going to happen in 3 years' time. Because potentially they're going to have to go through the whole process again. Because as valuations change, the allocation will change. So we're going to be careful that what we're doing today has a long-term perspective. Generally, I would expect the revenue and financing policy to last at least 10 years. Now, why we're back now is this is not a full review of a revenue and financing policy. We're not going through that arduous process we went through 5 years ago, where we looked at every activity, understood who benefits, which part of the community, etc., who were the exacerbators, etc., for each activity. All we're doing is we're saying is, okay, what's not working? What do we need to change? But also, we also talked about when we said we were going to put it off for another day, and the day is finally arriving, about land versus capital. Right? And some of us, in the last few years, I've been through this with 2 other councils where they have actually moved from land to capital.
Are there many that have moved from land to capital?
Basically, everyone who moves from land to capital.
Not the other way around.
Not the other way round.
We're kind of in the minority.
So there's not many that are still based on land, is there?
And we'll unpack that a little bit later of why, but that's, we're just a bit of context. So when we took, so basically what we need to do, we're not going to go through this formally now, but this is a 2-step process. So the 2-step process requires us to actually look at the 5 attributes as in section 1013A, and legally it requires council to disclose its reasons for its allocation at that stage. It's a mandatory consideration. You've got to consider it. So if you look at the Auckland case of the bed tax, that went all the way to the Supreme Court. So that's a very nice piece of legislation. So that's supported, and they took their view on the allocation. People disagreed with it, but the Supreme Court said, right, they made a reasonable assumption. You might disagree with it, but that was the final outcome. And that wasn't, it was only over one targeted rate. And I think that's really important. So we've got to consider that. So when if we change anything substantially, we've got to go back and say, are we actually being consistent with that? Now, step 2 gives council a lot of flexibility. So basically, it allows you to say is considering, now, this is interesting because the current government have said we're going to get rid of the 4 well-beings. But then if you look back in time, they got rid of them back in 2011, I think, from memory. It basically says in the interest of the community, which is actually the 4 well-beings, in my opinion. So, yeah, they've got another agenda.
Semantics.
Sorry?
Semantics.
Absolutely. So it's the same thing. So basically, providing you have given really good consideration, you can move levers based on what you believe is appropriate, considering what is best for the community. And the best example I can see is actually not your immediate neighbours to the north, but Wairoa, with the forestry case, where forestry, in the councillor's view, aren't contributing enough to the overall rating base of Wairoa District Council. And there's 2, basically, it came down to the well-being of the community, particularly economic. Now, they didn't say is that forestry are actually costing us a lot of money in terms of our roading network. A number of councils, like for example Stratford, say that, and they can say yes, forestry and Whanganui are paying, we've got these forestry roads, which are our roads, and we don't get enough money from the government. therefore we need to have a targeted rate on forestry. Their one was two-pronged, was that because of the move from farming to forestry, a lot of the businesses that previously supported farmers are no longer there, and employment decreased over a period of time. In fact, I remember in the mid-90s, I remember talking to the then chief executive of Wairau, and he goes, we're almost thinking of the last person up there is going to turn the lights out. Things have changed a little bit. I mean, it's plateaued in terms of their growth. So they said, because of that, forestry should be paying more. And also when you look at and they moved to capital value, that the capital value of was significantly less. And we'll come to the reason for that later. We think forestry should be paying more. Also, where the workforce is based in the forestry and where the production is, it's not in the district. And the forestry companies admitted that as part of their recent court case, which they lost. They said, oh, but while Wairau doesn't benefit from the forestry, New Zealand Inc. does. They just shot themselves in the foot because this is about local benefit. Also, the finance manager, CFO at Wairau had a very good case of your BP service station. And if you stop there first thing in the morning, a lot of the people stopping there and buying their coffee and their sandwiches are actually heading up to Wairau to walk the forestry for the day and then come back again. It's quite different. So that's why Wairau was able to uphold their I think it's 3.75 differential on forestry blocks on a capital basis. And that went to the Court of Appeal. And what blew me away, so they won in the High Court, and then the forestry owners didn't like that decision, so they appealed to the High Court. The High Court announced their decision within about 2 or 3 weeks of the hearing. I haven't seen a High Court make that decision so quickly, and it was unanimous, right? That Wairau District Council was valid in having that they've done everything right. So that gives council a bit of comfort, providing you follow the process correctly. While you might have to go through a bit of pain, and I'm aware of one other council that is having a little bit of a dispute with a very large corporate, very small council, having a very large debate with a corporate over their rates. They've gone through the process correctly. And in Jonathan Salter, who's heard of Jonathan Salter? Jonathan is Mr. Rating Act.
Sure is.
He advised the council, and I think the council ultimately win. It might cost them a bit of pain, but it'll be ultimately worth it. So it's about, and they've kept true to the process. So if I say today, you're going off piste, right? You need to stick with the process. That's why I'm saying it. We've got to be promote fairness and efficiency. So sometimes there's a bit of tension there, and we've got to make sure that we talk about that long-term prudence. So the outcome, that's what we're talking about. We've got to be legally compliant, and you've got to be able to justify in your prudence. A reasonable person can say, yes, I can understand it. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to agree with you, particularly those who are potentially negative or affected.
But just quickly on that, before you're talking about reasoning within prudence, having that clear line of connection from the activity all the way through to the funding, that sort of thing. Because you have to be able to defend this.
Yep. All right. Any questions on the process? So you're right on track. Yeah. Okay. Right. So basically, when we come to the general rate, now the general rate is based on what the council decides is appropriate that the community as a whole should contribute to. So the general rate everyone pays. Okay. And basically, there are three options. Well, actually, only really 2 options. The first one is the annual value. Right? Now, for a Whittaker's Gold, can someone tell me the definition of the annual value?
What, Google?
The rental value? The achievable income?
I'll give you a crunchy for that answer.
That's
Right? It's pretty close. So what it actually is,
You got this?
Nigel.
no. Yeah, you're worse than me, mate.
at least when you're through that.
Thank you, Keith.
Nigel's
Cricket team.
partly right or majority right. So what it is, it's basically saying is, what is that property worth in terms of its annual rental value, or 5% of the capital value, whichever is the greater. Okay. And why? And where that works really well is when you've got a city or a district that has high commercial properties as a proportion of its properties. So it worked really well for Auckland Council. When Auckland City Council. So Auckland City Council was predominantly around the CBD and with big malls, etc., works really well. Commercial. Manukau used it for a short period of time, and again, they've got quite a large commercial area. Manukau also, believe it or not, at that stage, had a relatively high area of farmland, and because it was 5% of the capital value, that was appropriate. So that, but when Auckland Council was formed, because you had Rodney and all the way down to Franklin, and they had a variety of rating mechanisms, the Local Government Commission decided on behalf of Auckland Council that they should use capital value. And Auckland Council hasn't moved from capital value. Now, if this council wanted to move to annual value, absolutely you can. But it would come at a significant cost because you would actually have to employ specialist valuers to undertake that valuation. And you'd be the only council doing it.
Hell yeah.
Sorry?
What does that last comment mean?
Yeah, well,
Not very prudent.
well, I mean, you could actually do it if you had a valid visa.
Yep.
Yeah. For example, if you had large commercial holdings as a percentage of your entire city, potentially could make sense. Because commercial property is valued on its rental return.
So you're saying that there isn't a threshold percentage-wise that applies to each of those three scenarios? No.
But when you're having a look and see that we're sort of predominantly residential, rural, a bit of commercial in there with that mix, we could absolutely do it, but the burden of maintaining it, potentially the impact on ratepayers is significant. So, yeah.
And so the question that I've written down here, and this is just a maybe offline kind of thing, but I'd really be interested to know what our property type is, our entire rating base. I think that would be really, oh, you got it.
It's coming. It's
Oh,
coming.
sorry.
It's
Yeah, cool.
So can I just add to that as well? If you found out that half your city were your residential houses were all rentals, would that play a role in there as well?
good question.
Just want to check.
You got the chocolate, didn't you?
Yeah, I can sell it. I can on-sell it.
You can't sell it. Okay, you can trade. That's part of the engagement rules. I'm not having any crunchies by the end of the day.
Going up in value.
Yes, it would be, right? It's and also just to clarify that annual value doesn't mean it happens every year. It's the cumulative annual rental value, right, as Nigel has talked about. And that's done every 3 years still.
Yeah.
But you're right. So, for example, if you had 50% of your properties being commercial and 25% as being Airbnbs, it would make logical sense. Providing you can identify who the Airbnb is, right? But if that was the case, but again, you'd also have to weigh up the advantages versus the cost, because you'd probably have to employ a couple of specialist in-house valuers, because that's what Auckland and Manukau had. They had in-house valuers that did it. because it's not something that Quotable Value or the other providers actually really understand. So capital value, we'll come and unpick that a bit, and then what you've got is land value. And you can only use one. You can't pick and choose to say we want to have capital for this activity, right, on a general rate, and we can't. So you can't do that.
It would be massively distortive to how we set rates.
Yep. Okay. So when you look at the purpose of the general rate, it's basically saying it's the community as a whole. People refer to that as public good. Now, if you look at the legislation, public good isn't actually mentioned in the 2002 Act. It was mentioned in the old 96 legislation, and that was, at that time, it was based on a pure economic assessment. And that became a great money spinner for economists. However, they changed the legislation. It's basically what council believes it's appropriate considering the following factors.
Is it true that the higher that is, the more it disadvantages lower income ratepayers?
No, that's coming. We're coming. That's basically you're 2 slides ahead.
Okay.
Whiteboard, excellent, right? So basically the general rate, it's basically saying is it's everyone benefits, the whole community benefits, or it's not practical to charge the users. And my classic example is, well, libraries you could, right? But these days it's really, unless you put someone on the door every time you go in, $5 please. I can imagine the community outrage at that. But also parks and reserves. You can't stop people from using parks and reserves. You can't identify who they are. And governance, right? Who benefits from your decision making?
We don't.
Oh, yes, hopefully it's the whole community. Everyone.
Sorry.
And everyone over 18 is entitled to a vote, whether they own property or not. Mm-hmm. And that's why you've got a quirky bit of legislation which some people don't like. That if you own property outside of your district, you can go on the ratepayer roll. Because, you are, what's the saying? It's basically voting for if you're paying taxes, you should be able to actually influence. So that's fine. So interestingly, and the Woolworths case is basically what it's under the old legislation. It basically said that you don't need to actually have a high degree of benefits received. So you don't need to prove and this was in Wellington, they had, I think it's the way Wellington was 66% of the general rate was paid by the commercial ratepayers. I've changed it since, but it's still pretty high. And they, because of the following factors, that we believe it's appropriate that commercial should pay that have that differential. The courts supported that, and that hasn't been overturned, and was supported by the Auckland case. Right, and scary. All right, so basically, this is where the general rate is broken down into two components. Is you can actually have it by way of land capital or annual value, and then by way of what is known as a fixed amount per rating unit, or a fixed amount per separately used or inhabited part of a rating unit, commonly known as a SUIP, depending on which school you went to. And coming back to your question there about who's disadvantaged, so under a whiteboard, so if you've got how much you pay in rates, going up that line. And then your value, irrespective if it's land versus capital, excuse my writing, I can't write. So basically, if you have, I want to check that before I write on. I've been caught out one as a black one. Yeah, that's right. So if you're on a pure land or capital basis, the higher your value, in theory, the more you pay in rates. Now, if you introduced a fixed charge, and we can't do it under legislation because of section 20, 21, I can't remember, I was getting confused. I think it's 20. Right. You could actually, if you went for the Margaret Thatcher poll tax, and I was actually in London at the time without the rights, and it wasn't pretty, you could actually charge everyone a fixed charge, irrespective of their value. So that immediately, 21, thank you, would affect the lower value properties.
So we do that, don't we?
You do. You have, what's your percentage? 20%?
22.
22?
Yeah.
So what you have said as a council, that we're going to charge everyone of our total as a formula, we're going to have a fixed charge. What is it, Gary?
Fixed charge.
Or how much per property, roughly?
Oh, I don't know. Beth will. She's on the call.
Huh? Anyway, say it's $300, right? Every property, irrespective of the value, pays $300. So the property down here with no value would automatically pay $300. And that line would do that. So here, that's Joe Average. So irrespective of whether the fixed charge was $1,000, $2,000, Joe Average would actually pay no difference, whether it was a fixed charge, irrespective of the value.
Thanks, Beth. 578.70.
There you go. All right.
We can.
Put our rates notice today.
Okay. Right. So it's $500. So the higher, if you were to move that to say 30%, then it's not quite right. But I can't draw a straight line. It's a bit of a worry, isn't it? So what happens there is the low value properties pay a lot more. And the reason that area is actually less than that area is because a lot of your properties, in terms of if you look at where your properties sit, they generally sit, you do your distribution curve with something like that. And that's why you got it. So basically, the higher the fixed charge, the UAGC, the higher, the greater benefit for high value properties, and it impacts your low value properties.
So just sort of in simple terms, if you've got, say, $100 as a percentage of $1,000 versus $100 as a percentage of $20,000. Yeah.
Yep. And
Can I just say that's the theory of it too, but I'm just trying to put a little bit of Maxine into this because the poorer people have poorer houses. But that may not necessarily be the case because the poorer people may have rentals owned by someone else, so not necessarily paying the direct rate.
Yeah.
Or it could be a state house, or there's a whole lot more variables.
And the argument for having a UAGC is everyone should, running a council, irrespective of your value, everybody should actually make a contribution.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the principle of it.
I think everybody agrees with that.
Yeah.
It's a matter of the percentage.
Yep, absolutely.
30% is at 30%.
Yep.
So
Can I just say now, we'll come on and pick the 30% cap later on. I had a council that and I wouldn't advise it, went to 42%. I'll tell you how they did it later on. Guess what happened with their bad debts?
Through the roof.
I wouldn't say through the roof, but they went up. And guess who actually controlled or had significant influence over decision making around the council chambers? It was a provincial council, so that's rural and towns, farmers, because they've got high capital value or high land value. So you're good friends. If you were a non-city council, you weren't heading towards a maximum, you'd be hearing from fellow farmers every year, you need to move it to 30%.
Businesses that can write it off and get it back into.
So irrespective of you've got land or capital value, you are entitled to have a differential. And basically the differential says, providing it's either step 1 or step 2. So step 1 would be saying is that this group of properties are contributing more, that will need to contribute more towards that activity than others. And the example here might be stormwater. There's an argument, and that's going to change with the Water Services Bill, that currently there is actually a high correlation between capital value and the impervial surface of a building or property. So basically, if you actually get your GIS people to say is what is the capital value of all your district, and then overlay that as a percentage of their hard surfaces, it would be about 60%. So what means anything above 0 is a correlation, but the higher you get to 100%. So that's quite a high correlation. So you could say that commercial people, because I've actually got more impervial surfaces, should actually pay more for stormwater, could be a step 2 rationale for having a differential for stormwater. I'm not saying you do, but I'm working with one council that does that. So that's step 2. You can actually, you could do it to say is we think that commercial, because of X, Y, and Z, should pay more. You could also do it. I've got some city council that's got some quite large land holdings, and it's quite a large city, but they've got some rural land, and they think they have to believe that the rural people should be paying less. So they actually have a differential going the other way. Okay, but when you come to set your differential, you've got to basically say is who is going to have that differential based on Schedule 2 of the Rating Act. And in broad terms, it talks about the use of the land or what is zoned under the RMA or permitted under the RMA. You can have it the area location. Location is quite common, that this area should be paying more. I wouldn't worry. I haven't seen too many councils use land, annual or capital value for justification of a differential. But it's predominant is basically the use of the land or the location where it is. They are predominantly around the country, whether you're land or capital, that's what's used. Thanks, Gary. All right.
Me. So we don't need to go through this in too much detail, and Philip's already touched on some of it, so we will be going through quite a bit of this in the next slide. But in terms of looking at capital value again this time around, it was flagged during our last revenue and financing policy review, but given that that had been the first review in many, many years, and there were such significant changes to rates and funding, all those sorts of things, so council felt it was a step too far really for the public to do that, but it was earmarked, and we took notes that we should consider it this time around. So with the capital value, essentially it's land value plus the improvement value. And it's worth noting as well that it does exclude, berries on plants or fruit on trees, and also logging timber too, because that's considered stock. It's not a permanent feature of it. But when you're looking at, say, vineyards and orchards, it's the trees within them that are also included as part of this. And obviously things like machinery and other stuff are excluded from consideration for capital value. So is there anything you want to add there at all?
I mean, this is the hard bit is the people saying is why, right? Also, why is it included? Well, it's actually part of, normally when you buy a property, right? You would buy a property, if you're buying live in the bay, the other bay, right? We've got kiwi fruit orchards, right? A bare piece of land, right? Is basically land, but when you buy a kiwi fruit orchard, right, you're actually buying the vine. Okay. Now, interestingly, when you buy a kiwi fruit orchard, if you were to buy it in, say, March, compared with buying it in July, you would actually pay more for it in March than you would in July. Why?
When you harvest.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, collective. Oh, they'll take a chocolate on your way out if you didn't get one. Yeah, right. And the same with a forestry block. So when you buy a forestry block, you buy it saying, oh, okay, in 5 years' time, we expect to be able to harvest the forest, compared with one that's just planted to be paying more. So that's the rationale for it. Interestingly, there's been a bit of case law on capital value. Gold kiwi fruit. Does anyone know the challenges with gold kiwi fruit? Your councillors to the far north of here would. Sorry?
And they're worth them a lot more in the supermarkets.
Also,
They go further north.
Yeah.
Sorry? Gizzy?
Further
I've
north.
had bugs.
Gizzy? So what it was actually Gizzy district,
They
right?
require more water.
They require, yeah,
no,
no, they actually just require more wind protection. So what the trick is with gold, you need a license. So for every plantable hectare of gold kiwi fruit, you need a license from your good friends, Esprit. And that license is attracted not to the property owner, but to the land. Right? So Sally can't own a kiwi fruit gold license, but the land that she owns, if she was so lucky, could actually own it.
And then if I sell the land, then that license goes with the land.
Correct. Okay. And believe it or not, you can actually buy and sell
The license.
the license, but you also then have to rip out your gold
Oh,
kiwi fruit.
yeah, gotcha.
Okay. So there was an interesting land valuation tribunal hearing, which I think did go to the High Court in the end, that there was a bit of a dispute between the gold kiwi fruit owners and Gizzy District Council, because the valuer general ruled that the gold license should be included as capital value and should be assessed accordingly. And when you think about it, I tend to agree with it. Now, I'm not a valuer, right? But if it's actually giving more value to that piece of land, and therefore it's got to be attributed as capital value, just like the vine. It's adding. So that's just a little bit of useless bit of information to tuck away. All right. All right. So that's capital value. So, all right. Let's have some debate about the advantages of capital. All right. There's a starter for. Are there 10 there? A starter for, well, actually advantages and disadvantages. Now, the advantages that people say is that capital value takes in the full value of the property. So bearing in mind, based on the Wellington City Council case, that they also ruled that the general rate is actually a form of taxation, which therefore you should actually be then taking the full value of why you should actually be using capital value. That was their argument that they made at the time. So the examples that I have been given, you've got a $2 million house, right? Gary's got a $2 million house, and I've only got a $1 million house, right? So in theory, Gary should be paying more. That's the principle. He's got more. And rates are basically a gross wealth tax, right? The fact that Gary, used to work for the bank, so he's got a mortgage of 1.9 million, and I don't have any mortgage at all, right? Doesn't matter. It's a gross wealth tax. So that's the principle behind it, right?
Can I just put something else in? I mean, the rates we charge is a huge hot topic with people out there. Which one would mean that we'd be charging higher rates here in Napier? And what's the public perception of capital versus land values?
So really good question. The issue is, so land or capital doesn't actually give you any more income. It's the question of who actually pays. And can we just hold you're getting 2 slides ahead of me all the way, Maxine. You're doing well.
She's hard at trying to get a chocolate.
If you think back to the last slide,
Max.
Me down.
Oh,
the last financing policy, there was quite a bit of discussion around this also from the comms team around the cake. So
Okay.
sorry.
Also, interestingly, for a council such as let's pick on right? Louisa's old stomping grounds, right?
You can fact check for us.
Yeah. So Kaipara, particularly Mangawhai, growth there is astronomical.
They don't like paying their rates.
And of course they don't pay their rates, and that was a decision. That was a stuff up well before your time, wasn't it? Anyway, the issue there is, so every time someone builds a new house or a commercial building, you're actually increasing the ratepayer pool, right? The pool is getting deeper. Whereas on land value, generally you don't see the same increase in land value because all that's happening is just that the land might be going up a little bit because it's now been subdivided, but it's not going up proportionally to the amount of development. But also with that extra development, and let's pick on Mangawhai, comes significant extra costs for council. Infrastructure. So there is actually okay. The third point down there is because, right, let's go back to Gary's and my argument, right? House, right? We've got the same size section. Right? My section's $500,000. Gary's is only $500,000, but he's got a $1.5 million house and a $500,000 house. When the land value changes, and it's the land that generally moves, my land might go up by $700,000, but my capital value might go over to 1.2. Gary's might go from 2 million to 2.2 million. So I've actually, if we're on land value, there's a greater swing because of the land value. And land value is the one that actually fluctuates the most. Yes, we've seen construction price over, since 2020 to 24, but that's progressively actually coming back now. So it's over a long period of time, it's the land value that actually has the greater swing. So if you've got a smaller denominator, you're going to see greater swings. And particularly between areas as well, right? That this area is now more popular, therefore the land value is worth more, therefore they go up disproportionately. So that's the advantage, right? Okay. Through the higher value of improvements, right? And this is particularly true for commercial properties. So I've got a piece of land. It's got, right, again, my property. I've got one dwelling on 500, worth 500,000, but next door, 3 dwellings on the same land value, right? Should that property next door with 3 dwellings pay more? Sally, I can see your brain ticking over.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah, but under land, it wouldn't.
I know. Yeah.
We
I mean, you do a little bit with your SUIP.
that's what's
Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
right.
So it does capture it, but it doesn't capture it.
Highly.
And so we can't always get every single permutation of that. And also by using the SILP to define that, we may accidentally penalize some parties as well through the unintended consequences. So you've got to have a comfortable kind of middle ground between the two. But it is a challenge that SILP partially addresses.
Okay.
Hmm.
On the disadvantages, they're not a one-for-one relationship. With any change, there's going to be a cost, right? Also, there is an administrative cost with capital value because every time someone does a building consent, you've got to update their capital value. Doesn't always happen correctly, but it should happen, okay? Also, it's not necessarily a proxy of high capital value, high income, because you can actually have people with high capital value and low income. So there's not a one-for-one relationship.
Pensioners can fall into that category.
Yes.
But contrary to that, it's generally agreed that the ability to pay a higher capital value correlates with ability to pay.
There's a higher correlation. It's not perfect.
No,
Yeah, it's
none of it's perfect.
oh, and hey, rates aren't perfect. It's rough justice, right? Absolutely. And you're sometimes using a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
So the same thing can also be said about people with large pieces of land that they've owned for a long time with low income.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the value of the land has accelerated doesn't mean they've got a greater ability to pay increased costs.
More slides on. We talk about that as
Okay.
well.
But the other basis for around capital value, isn't it also a recognition that if people have built a big house on a small block of land, they're more likely to want to use more of the council reserves and facilities
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially, yeah.
because they can't walk their dog in their three square metres of backyard.
Correct, absolutely. And that's particularly true where you get areas of significant build in apartments. Absolutely.
So the capital value, is it done on square meterage of the house, or is it quality of the house as well? How does that all work out?
So
Good question. Okay.
Yeah.
So with capital value, a lot of the valuation, in their normal 3 billion valuation, it falls under different legislation, but it's done by QV. So they're our provider in that space. And so typically they will look at value of the land as well as the improvements. So have there been any significant changes to it, like have the nice kitchen been put in, that sort of thing, but also the quality of the properties around it as well. So even though you've got like the worst house in the best street, that will have some impact on the valuation of that particular property. It will sort of cross-contaminate, so to speak. But yeah, it's all sorts of things can do it. So if you've got, say, a large section in a place where it's been heavily developed, that might be more desirable. And so your per square meter value will just go up. So yeah, there's all sorts of factors like that do go into valuation.
But a lot of
In
people
theory-
renovate their house with no, you don't need a building consent to do that. And you can have,
Can I just say that? Like I go, look, it's not a perfect system.
I know.
The issue is, so what QV is supposed to do, they're supposed to look at the property and say it's the market value based on a mass appraisal system. It's a bit complicated, but they should actually say, okay, this type of property, a 4-bedroom property with separate, 4 separate garages and parking, because they've got that record, in that area should be worth about this, irrespective of the state of the kitchen or the bathrooms, right? And that's why a rating value is not necessarily market value.
Yeah, they're often two different things.
Yeah.
So often what will happen with large groups of houses in the same area that are quite similar, they'll do what's called a desktop valuation. And so they won't go out to visit. And it was a perverse positive outcome, but it was for the benefit of a lot of ratepayers during the cyclone. We're going through afterwards, we went through our revaluation. And we worked a lot with QB to make sure they went out and inspected all of these properties and gave a true valuation of what it was. Because we could think of nothing worse than having some of these poor ratepayers just been through this flooding, damage to their properties, getting full rates, but in reality, there's been material damage to it, which means that they may not be able to use it the same way again, or it will take some.
Livable.
Yeah. But yes, so there's a little bit of magic behind the valuation process, and often what people buy and sell it for, they'll use our valuation as a guide, but really it's what the market desires, what they're willing to pay.
So if you've got two old houses side by side and one of them's bought by a developer, knocked over, and they build like 3 or 4 apartment buildings on it, does that increase the value of the old house?
No.
No.
Not so much unless
On
Probably devalues it.
potentially it could, but it doesn't matter because it's the underlying land value, right? That of it, which is a significant component, right? But so what would happen in your example if you had 2 identical properties, say with the same capital value, say 500,000, right? And you knocked the old one over, right? And you built 3 brand new apartments of high spec, potentially that would take the capital value to 1.8 million compared with 500,000.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
It does, but yeah.
in this situation using capital value, if you had place next door being developed, your land value may go up slightly, but because the capital of that undeveloped property, although the one hasn't been knocked over and the older house hasn't had anything done to it, then it wouldn't go up that much. But if you're going on land value, it would actually have more of an impact on
I've only got it twice.
the value of the property. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. This is the next third bullet point down there. I haven't seen anybody not do any work because it's going to increase their rates in New Zealand. It's an often common. Now you'll be aware, or maybe not, that I helped your friends at Regional Council go through their process, and I had to listen to all the interesting submissions. And we had a very interesting submission from a group of Wellington ratepayers who were saying land value is the only way to go. And they were using all these examples that capital value discriminates development and you shouldn't be doing, etc. When we dug behind the submission, guess where the information came from?
Taxpayers Union.
Right? What was that you saying? No.
Bit inundated with.
No, it wasn't the taxpayer union.
Policy.
No, it was from the Renters United, right? The rental people, but also where did they get their information from about that rates penalise development? Singapore and the US. Okay, not relevant to New Zealand's situation. I haven't seen any evidence of it. And rates, interestingly, people complain about how high their rates are. Right? You go to the States, my goodness, right? But often they've got a different rating system as well, particularly in California. So if you buy a property there now and your value is assigned at, say, $500,000, that $500,000 will stay there forever until you buy or sell. Wow. Yeah.
Interesting.
So when you buy a new property, then you pay the rates on the new value. And I can't remember what the proposition was to get rid of it, and it failed, right? So that's quite interesting, right? So you've got to be careful about understanding where this research has come from. Right. Certainly, orchards would be disadvantaged.
And vineyards.
Oh, sorry, orchards, vineyards. I thought orchards, vineyards. Yeah, okay. Because they're now included as part of the capital value. All right? That's right.
What about market garden?
No, because they're actually selling,
Crop.
they're selling the crop, yeah.
Yeah, you've got to think of the permanence of
Yeah.
it. So a vine will stay there for many years, a fruiting tree will stay there for many years, but yeah.
Unless you got it, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? So there was some work done on that, I know. Right, okay. All right. And, you know, the disadvantage is it still may penalise those with low values, right? On the next slide, any further discussions? Can anyone else come up with any more advantages or disadvantages of capital or land, right? Or disadvantages of capital? Bearing in mind we haven't considered land yet. No, right, thanks.
Well,
All right, land value, there you go, Gary.
Yep. So this is currently how we assess the value of property. And yeah, there's as sort of discussed before, there's a shrinking number of councils that use land value. So capital value is sort of prevailing, the most common methodology used for doing that. There's not really a lot to add to this because really we can sort of discuss it on the next slide with the advantages and disadvantages because we've still got quite a bit to get through.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Move on. All right. So there we go. It's okay. Basically, land value is there. Therefore, we don't have to convince people you need to change. That's the advantage of land value. There is a perception of incentivizing development. There's less administrative cost. Okay. And in theory, it is easier to assess. Now, when QV and other valuers do it, they really spend a lot of time looking at the land value. Okay. That's just the way the valuer general does it. Okay. The disadvantages, I think we've probably gone through those. And also the use of differentials, I think we sort of didn't talk about that, but generally the principle is because you've got capital values, you're actually capturing commercial value versus the land value. It decreases the need for differentials. Now that's saying you don't get rid of differentials, but that's the theory behind it.
We wouldn't need to necessarily rely on them as much. So at the moment with pure land values, we need to do a little bit of fiddling to try and get things to work a bit more. So sort of think of commercial differentials, 260% of the rate. And part of that is because that there's that perceived intensiveness of use of services of council. So yeah, we need to try and get it to fit through that.
I live on the hill. If I do retaining work on my property, is that for capital value or land value? What does it increase?
Very good question.
Oh, am I going to get a
No. She can have a.
It's an old fashioned thing.
Sorry, a flake. You want a flake?
Flake, please.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'll give it. Oops.
Oh,
Right. Alistair will take his share of that.
sure. Okay.
That's fine.
On the way down the.
No. I was saying I couldn't throw that. Right? I admit I couldn't throw. You're worse than me. So, absolutely, really good question. What's the answer, team? So, if Maxine improves her land, is
Land
that a,
value.
sorry?
Land value.
Absolutely.
It's improved your land.
Yeah, she's improved her land. She's improved the stability of her land. Now, the $1 million question then is, one, how much did that cost? Did you need a consent for it? And did QV actually pick up on that as part of their work?
You don't have to have consent for that, do you?
Yes.
It is on-
Oh, Maxine, what have you been doing?
And you've got
Yeah,
to start it with, I've got a friend.
you've got a friend. So, yeah, I think it's, I don't quite mean this, I'm not a building expert, but my understanding is anything over a metre. It's got to be consent. And the only reason I know that is I avoided when I did my rebuild at Waihi Beach. The builder wanted to put in a whole lot of retaining walls. I said, over my dead body, thank you. We're going to have we're going to have slopes. And then we're going to plant them. All right. Question.
If there's unconsented improvements that have been there for years, and then all of a sudden they're discovered, is there retrospective rates applied?
Oh, really good question. Really good question. Right? No. And actually, unfortunately, council can't go back and charge for previous years. However,
What do you think?
It's a one-way street.
Yeah.
If the council's overvalued and made a mistake, it has to refund.
Yeah.
Okay.
It can never disadvantage the ratepayer.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But tough, eh? But yeah. So it would be unlikely that because the councils the valuers using market values, they're not necessarily looking to see whether the item's been considered. It's only one part of the information they use. So in theory, these days with aerial photography and all sorts of things, there's a lot more information that is now being used, and the valuer general is actually demanding a higher standard of valuers.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on the valuation industry, valuation service providers now as a result of that. We do have ongoing issues with that, and part of it is really just the vigilance of being aware of some of these developments or things going on. If it's consented, it makes it easy because we've got a flow through process. Our planning team can notify us of it, but where it's unconsented or other things, normally that's where we pick it up during evaluations. It's something that's obvious. Yeah.
I've got a question. I found new flood maps and stuff that have come out. Obviously people in those areas having to pay much larger insurance. Is their land value going to go down?
Potentially. It's a difficult one because this comes down to the demand for that sort of property as well. So if it's one where it's a significant risk, then there is a potential that it may be viewed as undesirable by people to buy, which will put downward pressure on the value of the land itself. If there has been remedial work done, so it significantly reduces the risk of flooding, which council's been doing a heck of a lot of work in that space anyway, along with Hawke's Bay Regional, then it may not have as material or no impact on the property. Well, there may also be significant demand for property, and so people will ignore or not worry as much about that flood risk, especially if it hasn't happened for a number of years. And so the value of the property may go up anyway. So a lot of that is sort of market force, which QV will look at when it comes time for revaluation to see what sort of impact it does have on the property. But a lot of it does come down to supply and demand.
It's a Hastings property.
Eh?
It's a Hastings property. It's all right.
That's fine.
Oh, mine.
Are there any examples where a territory has changed from land to capital and it has resulted in a downturn in development? Well, that's
Not
good.
that I'm aware
Okay.
of.
No, well,
That's
If
cool.
you think about it, when it comes to developing a property, the overall cost that goes into building it, the rates would be such a tiny subset. The only time you would say consider that to be a bit of an issue is if you're a landlord looking to develop the property, then rent it out, and you may have quite a bit of stiff competition around town. And you say, oh well, I'm trying to get more people into my property, so the rates are too expensive. It's discouraging me from developing anymore. But in reality, for most developers, that's such a small consideration. So
I'm just testing the,
yeah.
the claims around that it disincentivises us. I'm just trying to think through that.
I'm not aware of any evidence,
Mm.
New Zealand evidence. No
And
one,
I guess, well, that speaks to the justification that we're asked to provide as well. As we, track through to it.
yep.
Well, one of the big ones with that change from land value to capital value, and this is something you would have to do quite a bit of modelling around, is what the impact would be for those changes across the area. Which pockets would be impacted, certain types of property, that kind of thing. And so you don't go into it blindly. And so part of that would be, informing council, informing the community about what this might do. But yeah, development, no, that's not really a consideration. It's potentially one, but
It's interesting when you think about what we would term our rural properties. A lot of them wouldn't really be affected so much, but it's the wineries, right? Like it's those with the grapes on the land, probably. Yeah. Okay.
and a few orchards. And we're such we're a compact concentrated.
We are.
Primarily residential, some rural, some commercial industrial.
Yeah. Right. Do you want to go? Oh,
So if our council were seriously considering changing, would it be wise to announce this before the election?
God, no.
No.
Until you've got them all.
Listen, that's before the 28 one.
Made it
Just leak it, mate.
Oh, yeah,
that
that's
provides some guidance on what things we should explore.
To answer your question, Maxine, what we'd be looking for,
A big pre-
we haven't booked it in yet, have we? 2nd of October?
Yes, we have.
Oh, 2nd, I haven't got the invite yet, that's right. What we'd be looking for this council to do staff would do, right, a position paper, Gary should work, right, with some help from some learned colleagues, a paper setting the advantages and disadvantages and its consideration of why it believes that the new council should consider what they recommend. That's all it can do.
Yeah.
So it's not a decision, it's just a recommendation for the new council and give that supporting rationale. Sorry? Oh, modelling, absolutely, modelling, yeah.
So in So in the interim, a lot of the workshops will be around looking at these options, exploring it, and having discussions. And it's about informing council about what we can do, the implications of doing so.
Yeah.
But further down the track, present these papers to council. Is this something you would be comfortable with for us working on? And then we'll go through that consultation process where we line things up
And tweak things.
and absolutely. And I mean, last time we did the revenue and financing policy, there were changes made to it as well after we presented to council through deliberation and feedback from the community. So it's quite a significant process. So through the workshops, no decisions. But formally, we do work through that a little bit later.
And there'll be modelling done behind the scenes, and we'll bring it back to the workshops to show you what the impacts are if we were to look at capital values. So what does that look like for the different parts of Napier and who's most impacted? So you can use that as part of your.
But it could be something that's asked at a candidates meeting, couldn't it?
Well, if it's asked at a candidates meeting, the answer is council doesn't have a view on it at the moment, right? Right?
Yeah, but they'll want your personal view.
Probably.
Well,
Right.
that's for us. Let's
That's-
navigate to the agenda. Yeah. Be like,
You
don't
might
poke the
say
bear.
is, I have.
Yeah, don't poke the bear.
So we're being quite deliberate, right? We're trying to protect you here.
Yeah.
Guess when the last meeting is? 2nd of October. So you wouldn't have actually says, look, I've only just received all the information. I haven't made up my mind yet. Huh? That would be my, what do they call it in Yes Minister?
Politically correct.
Well, yeah, politically correct. It's, yeah. And not only that too is, look, my view is it's got to be tempered with what the rest of my councillors, if I was elected to, would be to be, and it's got to be a collective decision. And it would then go out to the community consultation.
Yeah.
Because to me, the other thing too is you've got to be careful of is if you're saying is I'm in favour of capital value,
Predetermined.
you have predetermined. And I've had to provide some advice whether that councillor on this issue had actually already predetermined the thing, should they actually participate in the decision making? So you've got to be careful, right?
So at this stage, and over the next several workshops, it's really about informing. So
this is an information exchange.
Yep.
Right. Next slide.
Oh.
Right. So Gary has provided this high level comparison of, and now this is not a true reflection of what would happen if you move from capital to land. All it's saying is if you were on a pure land value, and you're not on a pure land value, nobody is, and you move to a pure capital value, what would be the change to people's rates? And this is not at the individual ratepayer, but it's at the groupings based on the current QV allocation, because we don't actually have these as differential categories. So, for example, what you need to look at is the bottom right corner here. Sorry for those who are online. That 2.06 is the important number to remember. So, for example, pastoral farming, the ratio of land to capital is 1.11. So in that case, if you moved from a pure capital to a pure capital value, their rates would actually go down.
Yeah, whether you're above the line or below the line.
Below the line, and no one's on the line. The closest you've got is residential at 2.02 as a group. So you wouldn't expect as a whole be collecting any more or less from residential properties. You would expect to collect a little bit more from commercial, industrial, a little bit less, other, whatever those 500 properties are, Gary, I don't know.
Yeah, odds and sods.
Odds, okay, it's not very nice, right?
Technical.
Technical term, yep.
What's another?
Yeah. Utilities. Now that includes,
And
This is the big one.
that's the biggie.
Yep.
So that includes all the lines.
Yep.
All the, you've got gas, fun gas?
No.
No, okay.
No, yeah, because
It is reticulated.
All right, yes, yes.
oh,
So it goes down Nelson Crescent.
Yeah, gas,
Ocean Spar's running some.
gas,
As well.
chorus.
Yeah.
Hold it, but you're sitting down. Water, wastewater, and stormwater reticulation. Reticulation, not the pump state, right?
yeah.
Okay, because the pumps are plant
Yeah, no, pipes.
pipes.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's got a significant amount of capital value all below the ground.
Yep.
And the footprint is almost non-existent
Yep.
above the ground.
So we felt the impact of this when regional council changed.
We did.
yep,
But we felt it here.
Philip's already admitted guilt on
On the
that.
utilities.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. That might-
So do we collect
Right.
like off our own,
Sorry?
did we collect rates of our own?
Yeah.
Well, hold it. Good, really good question. I know you've already had one, haven't you? So,
I guess the question, if we took our own utilities out, what would that number look like?
so the problem I have, councillor, is why are you taking your own utilities out and not even?
Another one, everybody else.
I would say, are you actually
Then it comes back into it.
acting in the best interests of all your ratepayers? I would also, have you got a preconceived idea? Right? The way to do it, right, would be to actually have a reduced differential on all utilities, if you want to. Right? There's all sorts of, we're not into the mitigation yet. We need to see who they are, right, and how much it's actually going to impact.
But we are aware of it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so this is one of those things, unintended consequences of knowing it. We're aware of it. We can mitigate it. But yeah, so when, for instance, with the change to capital value, when Hawke's Bay Regional Council did it, our cost to them went up significantly. So that's something we need to look at as well. Is if this was an option that we did explore and seriously considered doing some further analysis, find out where the pain points would be for profits of the community. So.
Right. Any other observations? So interestingly here, horticulture as a whole would actually go down as a whole. Now that's not saying individual properties would be potentially going more, right? And that's the trouble we've got, right?
We've got to do.
That's the next step. If you are, it's just saying is, and good practice says you actually identify your outline, here's your average property, but then you're going to have different bands that are affected in different ways. And where, what's the extremity is the right word, right? What is the impact across that whole range?
The S kills, Keith. The S kills, mate.
So something
And better, that's worth it.
Something that's worth noting is the reason why residential is so close to that average is because typically residential is our sponge. It's 70% of our rating base in terms of the value, and so it will always be the average. It will always sort of absorb any of those variances when we try to adjust. So yeah.
Okay, any questions on that? Right. Do we want, what time are we going to have? You want to stretch legs? We're going an hour and a half. We're going to 4. Should we take, because we're going to change gear and talk about targeted rates for a way getting and moving away from general rates. How long do you need, team? 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
It is.
That is. I've got to be careful what I say.
Yeah.
Okay. You got to say, oh,
That's why you got to be careful how you answer the public when they say, have you looked at this?
sorry.
No, would I think we'd all come out with the same answer?
Harry Merritt
Yeah. But there's,
on his way out.
oh,
Yeah. Third day. Eh?
there's a few. There's,
Those these Phil guys, eh?
It's like,
yeah, there's a few.
yeah. Hey,
You got
he
these Phil
had a-
for those.
Willie, fell off a hanging, watching out and smashed his hip. Yeah,
Just here to protect them.
so he ended up in hospital, ended up in Joe. Yeah.
And that's what he, because he started.
Wasn't eating much, but he was getting better. That was starting to get him up. Got down with- but he got a huge piece of cotton. Like I was like,
And you got to get like.
yeah, and he's dying. Like he's like,
And I,
he's on that, just messaging my cousin because he's, Tony said he's still hanging in there.
sorry.
Now it's just like dad, he's sitting there.
With Jackson.
Do you? I have a regular cat, monthly cat.
No drops, no. But Tony said he's still hanging in there. I said, just like dad, they got bloody strong.
I know he's,
Yeah.
I know.
I hadn't asked with mum.
Oh, yeah, we had a very frank conversation. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try and prop him up if possible, right?
I mean, he's 91.
No,
We're just trying to register last night if he's Hawke's Bay's oldest
looking for home debate.
living. State player.
And then not doing right there.
About 8 games for Hawke's Bay. But yeah, he got named in the centennial team, you know, as the
But, you know,
centre.
Yeah, would it be
Fast, New Zealand sprint champion. What, 75
well,
yards. 75 yards.
apparently, the problem
Apparently he matched the speed of Jesse Owen.
that
He's got a
board and streaming.
he was a bit of a show off. He's got a picture with the article saying that he ran the speed as
I don't know who's got.
Yeah. So Snow.
But yeah, it's just like, oh,
Kiwi.
you know how one thing
Oh,
happens,
yeah.
it's just,
Oh, yeah. Oh, my
I
goodness.
know.
I wonder what sort of planet he's on sometimes.
I say that to Jason sometimes if I'm having a bad day, I'll watch their council meeting just to reassure myself how awful it is for other people. Because actually it's just
Oh,
away with the fairies, isn't it? So,
oh,
yeah.
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 Are you going to conference?
Next week.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll
Yeah,
see you there.
Yeah, so Kirsten's going.
Did you guys a minute? Did you need me to pop out?
No, we don't.
We
No,
just-
nothing we say.
Someone else out there.
No, we're just chewing the fat on Kaipara.
No, nothing that you'd
No.
be surprised about.
No. Yeah, Kirsten, Annette, Sally,
Oh, yeah.
and Keith.
Oh, okay.
So,
I sort of go down there to press the fish. But
well, it looks like there might be a few interesting things on the agenda as well.
But
So,
I'm, so one of, being a sucker for management,
Yeah.
I got looking at chats as one of my programs. Haven't really sharpened it.
oh gosh, I know. Yeah.
Hmm?
It's an interesting time, isn't it?
Oh, it is very interesting.
How are you, Carolyn? You're still smiling just a bit. Yeah, this is good.
Yes, yes, it
And
is.
then again,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Well, they know me, don't they?
yeah, from the last time.
Yeah. Well, most of
It is a good exercise to do every few years. Though, 'cause
Yeah, that's
it's-
right.
It's how it's how we fund ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's good.
You like my facilitation tool?
I do. I was thinking that. Yeah, I think I might use that to.
No, that.
I can't steal your thunder. No, it's good. It's good. Well, I'm going to go and grab a drink.
Yeah, you got a bit of a
Yeah, I earlier in the week I felt really rotten. I feel less rotten now. So
lots of it going around.
so many people sick. Rachel's sick. I know she's online, but Rachel's sick. Debs is sick.
Yeah, she is.
So I think everyone's just trying not to catch anything really. Yeah. It's hard, isn't it?
Touch wood. I'm avoiding it.
I know.
I was a bit worried because I had 10 days off and was in Australia on holiday, right?
Mm.
And I've got a horrible cold for one day. Go, oh my goodness, this is hopeless. But fortunately, took some cold drill and took some other stuff, and it was a one-day wonder.
Yeah.
It's good.
Just tell you, mine's not been, I had one day, but it's not been, because last night, it's got to produce as a LGNZ compound, that'll be spreading lurgy.
Kicking the next freeze down by the pool. Would you like this one?
No, I've got my water, I've got my naked.
From the neighbours, that was all these vines growing.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Go on,
Yeah, yes. He got.
go on, target Alistair.
I don't know, because so.
Tom?
How are we going, Gary?
30. We need to.
What was that? Oh,
Yes, because I think Neil said
we finished?
it was just cheap.
Got quite a tricky bit of stuff to go through.
What do you mean?
We'll skip through, Alex. Do you want me to like
Uh,
CBD, 5 trucks?
The rates and other bits and pieces,
So that price,
minor stuff, right?
let's not try to rush time.
This
This
is there's a lot to cover, but
front of it like you wanted.
Oh, I think it was as well.
Hands down in front of it, see what happens.
No,
items raised in workshop 1, I think is.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, bye-bye.
to me, the next one will be 10 minutes.
Yep.
Okay?
Right, where is it? This is the problem, Philip, when you let people go.
Yeah. Well, you're in charge.
You're the one that said you wanted to have a break.
Right, come on. Come on. All are underway.
Steal all these chocolates. Oh, where were we?
Yeah.
Targeted rates.
Targeted rates.
Right.
It's in 2000.
No, did you send me the calendar?
No.
Yeah, well, that'll answer that question, won't it?
Do you know if Hastings are looking at change?
Next week, I don't know what's.
Oh, I haven't been here for long.
Whole day.
Does it make sense that you would both do it?
Awesome.
Woodlands Gardens.
So
That's it.
I think the decisions sort of.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On your.
Going to the,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things.
Oh, yeah.
Around which one you feel is.
Oh, yeah.
So ideally first.
It's a shutter speed one, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're. Obviously, that one.
I think you might appreciate that.
Yes, I do.
The characteristics are quite different. but-
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Changing gears, I'm going to rate through targeted rates.
I don't know if it's.
Basically, targeted rates gives you a whole lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
So you can actually do targeted rates. Now, the trick to a targeted rate has got to be for an activity or a group of activities. It's part of the legislation. Understanding very good. Basically, it can be over part of the city or the whole of the city, and we'll unpick that. Right now, for example, you can have everyone is going to pay over the whole city, pay a library targeted rate for transparency reason. You could put it as part of your general rate. You could put it as part of your UAGC. But if you wanted to, right, you could actually say we're going to have a targeted rate for the library, so everyone knows how much they're paying for the library. It could be over the CBD, right? It could be over a certain part. It could be over the hill, right? Excuse me. It could be just on the hill, I should say. So you can also set it differentially for part of the district, right? Could be part of the city. So you could actually say that people in the CBD should pay more for parking. So you could actually have a parking targeted rate. Not that I'm advocating one, but these are but they're options. Right? So you could actually say people in the CBD, all properties within this amount of the CBD should have a parking rate, and that should be every property pays $200 and everyone else pays $100. That's a differential targeted rate. So you can do that. What you've got to do is you've got to identify and go through the process of which properties should pay and how much. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
Okay. So it can be on a fixed amount per rating unit or sewer. Now, it can be on a fixed charge per factor, i.e. every property pays 50 cents per capital or land value over a certain area. So you could actually have a parking one that, for example, everyone in the CBD pays 50 cents per dollar of capital value. I mean, it's extreme, I know, compared with the residential people paying 25 cents.
Can I ask a blatant question?
What's a flake?
So these, unfortunately, are going to be left with her till the next workshop.
Oh, it's fine by then. Chocolates go off.
Oh, do they? Okay, right. Okay. Question?
Introduce a targeted rate partway through the year?
No.
Damn.
And so, to introduce a new targeted rate, there's a challenge with that. All right? Come on, you legal beagles.
Rates
What would
rise.
be the challenge?
The rates rise, isn't it?
No, it's something to do with long-term plans and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What's significance of engagement and all that sort of stuff?
Well, it's actually, no, it's actually, right?
Wasn't consulted on.
Yeah, that's.
Sorry?
Wasn't consulted on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, which section of the Act? It's under the Rating Act.
One of them.
One of them. Anyway, there's a section there in the legislation says you can't introduce a new targeted rate unless it's part of the long-term plan.
Oh.
So you'd have to do an amendment to your long-term plan
Yeah.
if it was significant. Interesting. Or you've gone through separate consultation. And why I said that is, of course, you can actually do an annual plan without actually consulting as well. So no, you can't. Not halfway through the year.
But extent plan or annual plan?
Sorry?
You could do it as part of an annual plan?
You could, but you'd have to consult.
Oh, yeah.
No, some councils don't consult as part of their annual.
No, I know that.
No, but if you're doing it, it would be the significance and engagement process.
It would,
You would have to do it.
All right.
Yeah.
That's my train of thought, right? No, on that.
Was
Introduce
no anyway.
the answer. Oh, sorry, yes. The partway through the year. So this is a problem with I have to say the new Rating Act that's been around for 23 years. The old Rating Act, the 1987 Act,
Last century.
last century, which was actually based on the previous century one, anyway, said if you have a wastewater or water connection rate, you can be prorated. So, for example, I've got a new property and I connect it to the network partway through the year. The old Rating Act says I could pay proportionally. So if I connect it in months, but basically the Rating Act, as it is now, says you can only rate what is on, now I'm going to get technical, the Rating Information Database as of 1 July. So if I've got a property that is not connected to water on 1 July, but I connect it on the 2nd of July, they can't charge me a rate for it. There are a few councils that have tried it and But try to amend that.
Well, so you build a house on a property.
Good, yep, and you get a year's free rates.
Really?
Yep.
Oh,
However, there is a trap for that. If you've actually got code compliance before the 30th of
sure.
June, right, it's known in the rating system, therefore you could be, okay, on your capital value. If you've also subdivided, which is the common one, but if you've actually lodged your 224 before the 30th of June, you've still got to pay as well. There's all sorts of wee tricks, right? So,
Secret build a house and then you.
But the reality is that property's been rated previously anyway, so.
Yeah, it has been, but generally, I'm aware of that, particularly for apartments, that until such time as it's completed, there can be substantial increase in rates, like substantial. You can do it for stormwater, fire protection, etc. So basically, interestingly, when you come to set a targeted rate, you've got to use Schedule 2 and Schedule 3. So can you flip to the next slide? So there's basically, this is the same as your differential for capital. It's basically who pays. So think about who pays as Schedule 2, and then whether you want to put them as pay a targeted rate for different amounts based on this, right? So,
just quickly, it's a good example of this as well with area of land. If you think about our rural properties under the differential, 5 hectares and above used primarily for horticultural purposes.
But that's your.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying it's sort of that's sort of one application of that consideration.
Yeah, but you could do it for commercial. All commercial properties, or actually, will pay a targeted rate for economic development. Okay, so that's all you're saying is part of Schedule 2. Who pays, right? How much they pay is set under Schedule 3.
Want to go to that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
So obviously you can do a fixed amount. So all commercial properties pays $4.50, or you can do it on your value. Interestingly, here's a new one, improvement value, which is the difference between your land and capital. So interestingly, for a while, Southland District Council used to recover its building consent activity by way of a targeted rate on improvement value. Rationale, generally improvements needs a consent, needs a building consent. I mean, they don't have orchards and vines and viticulture down there, right? But that would be, that's a really, really, really good one. This one I am yet to see anyone use. The area paved, sealed or built on. And what's the problem with that one, Houston?
So, no, do you want me to?
No. Right? Basically what it requires is as of 1st of July every year, you've got to go around and measure up all the new sealed areas. You don't need the consents. You've got to do that with your measuring tape on an annual basis.
Inefficient.
Because we did look at that with stormwater, but it just the work required was just monstrous.
Inefficient.
Yeah.
Right? Floor space is potentially useful, but you'd need to base it on your consents. Okay. Separately use inhabited parts. You already use that. This is an interesting one. The extent of service provision. So,
Toilet tax.
pardon?
Toilet tax.
No, toilet tax is the bottom one.
Yeah,
It's on that as well.
So basically, you could, but basically you could, this is quite useful. You could actually, a lot of councils generally use this for water. Right? So you've got a connection, but it's not, the system's available, but it's not connected. Okay, but it doesn't say 50%. 50% is a carryover from the old Act that went out of existing 23 years ago. But the water service, yeah.
The toilets and urinals, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
So, if you recall last time we did this, we had a look at it.
We did.
So there is a limitation on it, though. The Act does say that it's only sort of commercial industrial, I think.
Non-residential.
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 Non-residential is applicable. So we had a project where we went around and we did a lot of counting of toilets and everything else and found how unworkable and how expensive it was going to be to administer it. And so, yeah, we gave that kibosh.
Got flushed.
Yeah, so that would be my one strong suggestion.
Oh, okay. Let's learn from mistakes of the past. All right. So targeted rates, right? But again, you've got to use who's going to pay, then by how much.
On the back of my rating notice that I got today, we have 13 targeted rates that are listed.
That's way too many.
From water rates, fire protection, stormwater,
Yep.
sewage, Bayview sewage connection, refuse collection, curbside recycling, vehicle levy, off-street parking, promotion rate, swimming pool safety rate, rangatira revetment rate, and resilience rate.
Yep.
That's how.
They're not on everyone's book.
No, not everyone.
We- I would say that's actually a few, right? So where I'm spending a fair bit of my time, when I left that organisation, they had 300 rates.
Whoa.
Okay, they've got it down to 170. I've got instructions from a few people to see if we can get that down to less than 10.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So with us, though, the rates notices, they do have all that information on the.
Yeah, but they don't charge you.
Yeah, you cannot. And that's a requirement of the Rating Act.
And something we've been quite active with trying to do is to keep it as simple as possible. So that anybody that picks up their rates notice can easily understand it,
What they're being charged for.
Yep. Yep.
So we try to keep it low.
It's amazing how many people still don't know that we have targeted rates. And when you actually explain it to them and go and have a look, they're like, oh, I didn't know that.
Well, they don't know how to read their rates, so.
Well, they just never really looked at
Read
it.
the amount on the other side,
Separate it
zero.
out.
Yeah, yeah. Just see a swimming pool rate.
Yeah. Hamilton City has 4.
They don't have a coastline where they have to have revetments.
No, but they don't have even a separate water rate. They're going to have some issues, but that's
Yeah.
right. Well, they're not ring fencing; they're going to a CCO.
Ah.
Early.
Individual.
No,
Well,
they're
none
not.
of Waikato,
I thought so.
Waikato and Hamilton are going together.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm hoping to join a few others up as well.
Yeah.
But there might be a
Imagine.
few late to the party on that one. Right. Okay. Happy with that, team? Move on.
I think you should
Okay.
count the toilets again.
Now, this is the fun bit of legislation. This is why you can't have a poll tax. Remember my little graph over here?
Yeah.
That's why you can't go above 30%. However, there is a little bit of a trick. And I'm not sure whether it was a mistake or deliberate. No one's fetched up. I actually know the person who wrote it, but I've never asked them. So basically, you can only take 30% of your total rates by way of fixed charges. Now that includes water by meter. If you're using section 19 of this is a targeted rate, which you will be, so you include your water by meter as your total rates. But it includes the UAGC because that is a fixed charge. Now, this is what it says. It's a targeted rate that is set on a uniform basis. So uniform is not for your staff uniforms, as Tauranga found out many years ago. It's actually on a fixed amount.
Yeah.
So remember I talked about before having a car parking targeted rate that the people in the CBD pay, I can't remember the amount now, but anyway, it doesn't matter, right? Say $10 and the people in the urban area pay $5.
Yeah.
That is not
Uniform.
It's a differential rate which is excluded.
Yeah.
So that was the example of the council that I talked about before. they had a parks and reserves rate, a library rate, and a pool rate. All of those were set on a differential basis. So they were excluded from the 30% cap, and how they went to 40 to 42%. They no longer do it.
No.
So you can't, if you look at current, you've got to go back in time and find it. And I'm not going to reveal my sources. All right. So, but also it doesn't currently apply to water where it's set solely for the purposes of water and wastewater. So if you've got a fixed charge for water supply or a connection charge, that's excluded from that calculation. So if you go to, and the same with wastewater. So Gary, go to the next slide. You can talk about this.
Okay. So as we were sort of talking about before, at the moment, our total percentage is 22%. So keeping it low just means there's a little bit of headroom if ever we need to add something there and adjust it. So you'll note within that you've got we've got the resilience rate, which is something that's sort of been discussing in past meetings. And so obviously, if you decide to increase that, then would need to determine how that's going to fit within the overall sort of fixed charge. So the big one in there really is that UAGC. And so that is effectively our final lever that we would look to pull. And so a discussion would be to say, okay, well, if we need to increase the resilience rate because there's some there's stuff that needs to be funded coming up, then it would be a decision on, do we increase the overall percentage of fixed rates, but maybe 23, 24%, or do we decrease the UAGC to keep it within that 22%? So as Philip put on the board before, with a fixed charge, if you've got a lower value property, then it's going to have a proportionately higher increase than those higher value ones. And that's part of the reason why they do have that constraint of 30%, because it can distort things as sort of at the higher and the lower ends of that average. So, and as Philip noted, water's excluded from it, although not, sort of excluding the water by meter charge. So when we come to doing this modelling, these are one of the things that we'll be looking at, is playing around with the UAGC and some of the other factors within it. So is there anything else you'd like to add there?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward.
We haven't got a massive amount in there, and the Bayview sewage connection rate will be disappearing too. This is the last year we've got it, so it's nice to see the back of that.
I'd be happy.
So that one is a connection rate. It's not solely for. It's a connection rate. It's not for wastewater disposal. So that's why it's at. Okay, and it's got to be solely for. So, for example, if you actually had an infrastructure development rate for paying for new water and wastewater, that would be included in the 30% cap. Okay? You've got to be careful the way it's rather technical. Interestingly, I've had some interesting, robust discussions with Audit New Zealand because I think councils have got the 30% calculation wrong. Right? So even auditors get it wrong.
Yeah.
All right. So this requires careful consideration. All right. Thanks, Gary.
Okay.
All right. Any questions on targeted rates or the 30% cap before we move on? Right. Workshop one that you had. Outcomes.
Yeah. So this is something that's provided you some additional handouts on, with the SWOT analysis on a lot of these items. Yes, you did.
Oh, did I? Oh, sorry,
You can have this one if you want.
I just don't remember. So
Okay.
it's good old timers.
And so, if you'll recall from our first workshop, to ask you to sort of raise some of the issues you'd want to cover off in successive meetings, revenue and financing policy review. And so put together a SWOT analysis on each of the key items within that, just to give you a bit of an overview, provide some discussion points as well. I do note that the CCTV work, there have been other workshops on, and so you're working through that with the regulatory solutions. So we are aware of that, and we're talking with them as well to make sure that we're aligning everything. But I'm not sure how you'd like to handle this bit in particular, where you'd like to tackle it, because we do need to move on a little bit, but.
Well, to me, is there anything that the team would actually like to talk about in terms of, is there anything else you want to add? It's almost speak now, forever hold thy peace, not quite, but.
And also from the content, if there's any sort of questions or discussions you'd like to have around that as well.
There's a interesting development in Wellington where they're proposing a commercial rate for long-term rentals.
Long-term
rental properties, not short-term B&Bs and that sort of stuff, but they're proposing to have a commercial rate for properties that are rented.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Long-term rentals.
Yep.
That's something that we could consider.
Is that commercial properties or?
Yeah.
No, it's residential properties that are rented out on a long-term basis. And so they're proposing to charge them a commercial rate.
Housing New Zealand.
Yeah, why would you want to do? What's the benefit? What would be the benefit?
Just fine, that Wellington City Council are considering it.
I will talk to my friends at Wellington City. Do have one or two friends around the countryside, and see what I can find out about that. See what the officers have, right, to say about it. I'll follow that up. Unless you've got to contact them.
Well, I'm more or less saying it's not a residential property, it's a commercial.
It's a commercial property.
No, it's currently residential, but it's being used for a commercial.
Oh, commercial. Absolutely. Oh, that's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Oops, did I say that? So
housing people or housing businesses?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
This is
Housing.
I would have thought that Airbnb would.
Housing people.
and so this is for a residential property that's now being used for commercial business. Oh, it's easy.
So like my chiropractor is.
Yeah, like a chiropractor, like a chartered accountant.
You mean for people, as in people renting it?
Yes.
Long term. Yeah, living there.
Yeah. Is their family home?
It can be either.
Yeah.
It can be, as you say, it's a residential property being used for a commercial practice.
So what it would have to meet that threshold, it would have to be commercial as defined by their district plan. And they would need it would either be a permitted activity under the district plan or they require a consent. So that's how they actually identify it. Now, we used to do that when I was there at Western Bay. I think they still do. So in their definition of a commercial property, it's all property zoned or used commercially. And then they've got a definition of what they mean by commercial. Right? Generally, what a lot of councils have done, they've identified that as an issue, but they have said that, I'm going to be careful here because it's my wife's one, a chartered accountant working from home as a sole practitioner is not a commercial property, and they've got criteria of, they've used their district plan as the trigger. So you can do, absolutely we can do that, but it's got to be, you've got to tie it back to the district plan, because that's if you go back to the definition under who pays Schedule 2, it says where it's a permitted or a consent is issued under a district plan.
Yeah, like in my mind, it would only be if, and this is my chiropractor, for example, no one lives there ever. It's only used for the chiropractor.
Yeah. And a lot of councils that would automatically go as commercial. So it's not proportionally used, it's totally used as for commercial. It should be. So we'll check on.
Something like that in the district plan, because I've had complaints about commercial vehicles being parked on, say, the Burmans. And actually our district plan allows, I think, up to 3 vehicles to be parked from that commercial space. So I assume there's something to do with how many square metres of that in the house.
It often relates around number of staff or vehicle movement.
Yeah, it's definitely there. Yeah.
Okay.
Just for clarification, in the article, Wellington City Council has agreed on a draft long-term plan to go out for consultation. It proposes changing how rates are applied to properties used for short-term
That's
accommodation.
A short term. It's a short term. That's the Airbnb. Oh my goodness.
That's
So
No.
interestingly,
Investigate it and we'll go.
Yeah, let's see how it works out for them.
the biggest, the hardest bit is to identify who is actually using it for short term, right? So you've got two approaches on that council, or three approaches. You can go down to the Queenstown model. So the Queenstown model is requires a district. You're requiring a consent, so it's easy to pick up. The other one is to do a search on Airbnb and book a batch and give a staff member a full-time job to track it.
Like playing whack-a-mole.
Yeah. The other way to do it is under your SUIP definition. And that's the Tauranga City Council approach. So they're saying if you've got they're not actually charging, if you've got one dwelling that's being used for Airbnb, they're not going to pick up on it. But if you've got a granny flat or something that you are using for Airbnb, they'll pick it that way.
They've also put it on for 60 days or more.
Yeah, but that's so. I'll talk to Andrea, right, and see if she can provide me some background information. I need to talk to her about something else anyway.
Just a question about the targeted tourism rate. Like, how workable is it? Like, how complex would it be to actually define what is tourism related? It just seems like a can of worms. And also, do any other councils actually do a targeted tourism rate?
Well, with the targeted tourism rate, something we do need to consider first off is what is the intention of it? And the devil is always in the detail as well of like, how do you see it working? So normally you sort of have a general sense of, I'd like to do this and this, but the rules again may have unintended consequences or collect from the wrong parties or that sort of thing. So it may be that, is it for the people that are coming into town and staying for a few days here, or is it for the cruise ship visitors and the impact on the commercial properties around the CBD, or what does that look like? And so these are some of the questions that we would need to ask to be able to sort of do some analysis on it. And I think part of the challenge there also is getting an understanding of, depending on the nature of different visitors to Napier, is what kind of impact do they have and what kind of demand do they have on the city when they visit. So different types of tourists will have different needs and impact differently. So yeah, it's complex. It's not insurmountable, but it's something we'd need to look at and fully explore to be able to sort of get some clarity around. Yeah.
Can I also say, so let's go back to the principle of a targeted rate. Targeted rate's got to be in for an activity or group of activities. So what's your group of activities or activity that you're actually trying to
Pay for.
pay for? Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
A little bit like the bottom two.
Sorry?
A little bit like the bottom two. Could we look at something around incentivising more heritage buildings?
So can I jump to the bottom two since you've raised it? Have I got a deal for you? Because I wasn't party to workshop one. No. This is me taking your chocolate back. So what I'm suggesting here, right, is the last three are quite simple but quite hard.
Yeah.
Now, if you want it quite simple, we haven't talked about it as part of this workshop. Rates, remission, or postponement policies. Okay. So what you can do is a remission policy. You write it the right way. People have to apply. Council can put its own criteria. Wherever it's a rate, you've got to meet Schedule 2 or Schedule 3. So they're quite strict. Remission policy, there is no criteria. It's your criteria. You
So-
write the rules.
One already, but you could expand it to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
As an example, I mean, wherever we've got emergency events, we've got a catch-all in that we can quickly create emission policies, and we've done that for flooding and all sorts of other things. I put that one together during COVID. I was
Yeah.
very responsive.
Yeah.
And there is heaps of flexibility within it, but again, it's the sort of laws of unintended consequences of making sure you get that right.
yeah. But for example, Gary, so what you could do, if we let's pick on the bottom one, right? You're converting an existing commercial building into lots of residential properties. So the underlying zoning will still be commercial, but because they're now using it for commercial, residential, you could actually say we could have a remission policy for those properties that meet this criteria. We will treat those property, we will remit the rates as if they were commercial down to residential.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, interestingly, that when I'm going to hark back to my bad old days at Western Bay. So we had a small town that we were increasing the commercial footprint because they needed more commercial area. But in that footprint were existing residential properties. And we got a bit of feedback to say, oh, you're increasing my rates because you've moved my zone from commercial and I don't want to move. So what we did is we had a remission policy, said if you owned the property when we notified the consent and it was still being used on 1st of July each year, you would only pay residential rates. However, the footnote, if you sold the building and you bought it, it would become commercial, or if you then started using it for commercial purposes, it would automatically trigger.
Yeah.
So that was a simple way of dealing with that transition. And then, so you could do something very similar if there was an appetite for council without actually identifying all those properties now.
Yep.
And you could do that for the bottom three.
What about the one above it?
The greens.
Vacant land.
The vacant land.
No. Can I fall under the table?
Yeah,
I'm being frank.
that's the service.
Well, there is, yeah. So
Taking up space.
Thing with water and
Yeah.
rubbish bins.
well, the issue. Okay, I know. Well, I don't know where it came from because this was your comments,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I know of one council in the Lower North Island that is putting a significant differential on vacant and abandoned buildings
Okay.
as a disincentive, as a financial charge on them because they're blighting the landscape and they're not being used appropriately. All I can say is that is fraught with difficulty. Because when you've got to identify the characteristics of that building.
Look at my SWOT analysis.
Right?
Sorry, I didn't. Someone literally contacted me about this week.
Yeah.
They're like, you guys need to do something about that.
Because when I was sitting there going through this, I would spend, what does vacant land mean?
Yeah, totally.
You sort of got an image in your head of a bare patch of dirt, but there could be a number of reasons why it's that way. And so,
and how long has it been vacant for? And
all sorts of things. And I could not sit there and create a clear definition of what vacant land is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be really cheeky, right? And I'm admitting I'm being cheeky. That's the advantage of capital value,
Yes.
right? But you might want to see, this is the problem. What do you want to achieve with that vacant land? Are they paying? Should they be doing more? You want to penalise them and charge them more rates for not doing it? Well, that's probably vacant for a reason, and is rates actually going to make a difference?
If it's vacant land, there's no capital value.
Correct. Yeah, I know.
Don't get hit by the rates.
But you might want to hit them, right? I don't know. Huh? If you want to go down that route, right? What is the objective of what you're trying to achieve?
the thing about a targeted rate is it has to be tagged to a service, and there wouldn't be a service.
Just be
Associated
related to
with that.
activity. You can use part of that. Yeah, well, that's the trouble. Well,
Yeah,
it could be you might actually do it as a differential.
yeah, well, that would be
That would be the only way to do
yeah,
it.
but not as a, yeah.
You couldn't put a
Right,
target,
no.
no, you couldn't put a target.
No.
No.
No,
But there are ways and means of doing it, but for me, the trick was of defining it, and that's where I really struggled. Something else I just want to highlight as well, just being a little bit cheeky with this, is rates flexibility for business startups. It's not often you'll get the business itself owning the property. It's usually
Exactly.
a landlord.
yeah,
And so there needs to be some, if you're using rates in that way, or what you need to ensure is that there will be flow through or pass through of that discounting or reduction in rates to them. So what I'm quite excited about is I've got a new business that I'm looking to start up, and there's some rates flexibility for my bake shop. So I'm going to get a big chain and have them all over.
we're being very well intentioned, but we're thinking from a tax perspective rather than probably a rates perspective, right? Like
So-
that's where the difference would be made.
Again, a lot of this, it's always the devil's in the detail. And so when I go through to a lot of this work, I'm looking at what's the lowest common denominator. How could this be abused, or what's the unintended consequence of doing so? And so it's just stuff that's worth thinking about.
And I think in that, that actually is then all around the criteria that you set in terms of defining what a business startup is. And it might be that it's a locally owned whatever it is, so that it's not a national chain of vape shops or, whatever. Yeah.
And so that's where we need to have more discussion on these things to really start to flesh it out and get an idea, because sort of one of you may have an idea of what this should work like and assume that everybody else has that same idea, but it's not quite the same. So it's sort of coming to that agreement and then sort of communicating to us what that looks like, and then for us to be able to interpret that into some sort of policy, get it working. Yeah.
Interesting.
Are there any others around the countryside that have that policy?
Or
Rates remission.
Not that I'm aware of.
As in startups?
Incentivizing startups.
no, and normally that sort of thing is handled through grants. And you'll have like business associations and others that may be able to assist with that. And there's also government organizations that can assist too. So that's normally the first starting point.
yeah.
And with grants, you can have a lot of flexibility in that, because you'll have people applying saying, this is the business I've got, this is what I want to do, this is going to be the impact on the community. Can I have some money, please? Yeah. Whereas with rating, it's a very blunt tool, and it's quite tight and constrictive. So yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Anything else on that list? Oh,
We need to think about, or is there any appetite thinking about what we would do for redress land or social housing?
Social housing. So can I make a quick judgment decision there? My advice on that one would be a rates remission policy rather than a specific. So to me is let's.
It's Rachel, she's just.
yeah, I thought it was Rachel.
Yeah. So to me is I would be putting that as we might actually have two work streams. One is categories of rating, and then another work stream of possible rate remissions. And I would actually wait till we're finished the rating implications, and then leave, make a note, these are the remissions that we might want to consider once we've finished that then, and recommend bring that to the October workshop. It's only a workshop. Oh, excellent. I don't like meetings because, right?
Yeah, you've got to figure out the rates first, and then have a look at the impact it's going to have.
That's right.
Where you may need to support the community through these remissions.
Yeah.
But it's a good question. I know exactly what you're talking about too, Rachel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just so that's the social housing one, which we often get asked, in that, developers or businesses or social housing providers, I should say, are providing housing that aligns with council's requirements for housing and what their community need. And if it's in alignment with council priorities around housing, then would that attract some sort of remission? And the second one around redress land is where the Crown have settled with mana whenua, and the intention of that land is to uplift either, you know, the economic, usually the economic, but also can be cultural, and well-being of that mana whenua group, that hapu or iwi, and recognising that, you know, the intent of the Crown is for that land to have that, and would the council, you know, sort of support that in terms of the Crown's intent for that land. Recognising also that these things might be able to be treated also through the development contributions policy, but the government may go to a development credits model, which might not give that flexibility. But it's just, I appreciate it's something maybe to raise, like you say, in the next workshop. I just wanted to see if the elected members wanted to put it on their list.
With the Māori land issue as well, if it's can be classified as Māori land, it can be treated as non-rateable. And so that is one avenue, although there are hooks and barbs.
Lots of hooks. If it's commercial.
Yeah. So if it's commercial, no, but if there's some perceived benefit in that, it's a challenging way to go, but that is one way to turn it into non-rateable land. Yeah.
I mean, even you've got specific Maori freehold land remission policies.
Yeah.
So that's the tool that's been required by central government for us to use. So I would be strongly recommending, rather than as a differential, it would actually be
possibly looking at through that. Yeah.
Looking through a rates remission. Right. To me, we don't use rates remission policies enough, in my opinion, across the country to achieve our community outcomes.
Thanks, Rachel.
Okay. Right.
So just before we move on to these, I just want to double back. So we're working with Regulatory Solutions on the CCTV and City Assist work. We're working with the Waters team on revising the stormwater rate, and the targeted rate for tourism areas. What's the direction there?
Yeah, I think we need to clarify that. Yeah.
Is there any appetite for us to explore that?
Too hard, didn't fit.
Too hard?
Yeah.
Agree it's too hard at this stage? Okay.
Okay. And then those last three plus the two that Rachel's mentioned.
Yeah.
We'll wrap that into the work we bring back to you on the remissions policy with criteria. And the other one, vacant land, did you want us to look at differentials?
Considering Gary's done a nice little SWOT analysis.
I haven't read the SWOT analysis properly yet, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just park it.
Yeah.
Put it in the car park for next time.
Yeah. At least I can say to people, put it in the car park.
Yeah.
The car park's built now for me. All right, okay. Right. Alistair, yours.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, poor you, Alison.
Yeah.
You get us for the day.
Exciting stuff.
Few slides.
So the important stuff.
This is the important stuff.
I suppose to change tack again, what does council do with the rates it collects? It's what this is all about. And so the policy sets, I suppose, the optimal targets that we want to deliver these activities with. And this policy review helps us determine that. And I suppose maintaining the targets helps us maintain financial sustainability to deliver these activities. So something we look at each year and with our long-term planning cycles is the cost recovery of activities, and each year we'll just sort of update where we need to and jump into the policy if there's any areas we need to address. So one measure that we can look at is the non-general rates and reserve funding of activities, so the operational cost recovery of activities, to make sure we maintain that over time and deliver activities sustainably. And I think that chart just shows we are maintaining that over time. There's no real issues. I suppose some of our facilities and community and visitor is some of the areas we struggle with, and that's why we've got some transformation projects underway to address those facilities. But overall, as a council, we do maintain our cost recovery from non-general rates, and we address it annually and in long-term planning. So there's ups and downs within all those activity groups. Probably not too much to talk about. Really, yeah, just probably the business and tourism facilities are some of the struggling areas, and we'll sort of jump into some of those as we move across.
Does this information go out to the public? I know there's a scheme.
Yep.
That'd be helpful.
Public works.
It's public workshop.
Yep.
Yeah, I know it's public workshop, but I just wondered if our newsletters would be of interest to the general public, where their rates are going.
Yep.
We do put in our annual
report
where the total pie, what percentage is spent on
what? Yeah.
Is that in that neighbourhood or something thing that goes out? Maybe. I think it's a topic of great interest.
Possibly something we conversation.
It's in the pre-election report too, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
That, you know, the rates are spread.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, there are a number of places where that information is available. Yeah.
I suppose also the targets reflect that public-private split.
Yeah.
Which helps us, I suppose, run those activities. So we're not doing a full activity review. That was done the previous policy review. This time around, we're really just highlighting any areas which we think need addressing, or activities which have materially sort of strayed away from policy targets. Listed some of these items here, which I can go through. We're just basically, this percentage here just shows if we're achieving above or below what the policy targets are set to be. I'll just go down the list there. We're now covering emergency management with our resilience rate. So probably not quite right to have our policy as general rates 100%. So we just bring that into the policy. That's just an update on how we are funding that activity. Parking is, as you know, we updated our parking fees recently, and we are now recovering more than 100% of that activity. But I think as far as a policy target, we'll update that, propose to update that to be 100%, user charges. We had a little bit of rate support there, but we are covering that activity with user charges.
So anything that we over recover in parking goes into the parking reserve.
Yeah. Refuse is also an activity we're now funding with 100% non-general rates or reserves. So there was a bit of general rate support in the policy for that, but we're well over recovering for that activity. And the levies are expected to continue going forward. So that's a good target for that activity. Probably don't necessarily need to jump into all of these. The city and business promotion, we received some targeted rates and government grants, so we're going to bring that into the propose to bring that into the policy. Regulatory consents, we are now improving our cost recovery, so we're just going to update the range of user charges for that policy. Animal control, we also are probably recovering more of that activity, and we have looked at that activity too. We want to spend a bit more on the facility there, so we've brought that into the calculation, and we still think we can achieve the increased fees and charges cost recovery, which is good. Building consents, we're just bringing a range, propose a range. All the other activities have a range that didn't have a range, so it makes sense to put a range against that activity for our targets. And the only one we're actually proposing that needs a bit more rate funding in this list is the Napier Municipal Theatre. Just over time, struggling to sort of achieve the user charges amount that we want, so we're just asking for a little bit more in the policy for rates against that activity. The reason there's only one that we're sort of seeking, well, the policy is going to look at more ratepayer funding for is because on the next slide, some of the areas that probably do need it are actually under transformation at the moment. So, we've got commercializations underway. We've got the reimagines. a lot of that stuff we're just leaving alone at the moment until those processes work their way through. We're not sure where they'll sort of bottom out. The idea is to improve it as much as possible.
And we can review this again every year when we do it.
Fees and charges.
It's quite useful just to tweak things a little bit.
I think, the Muni thing, I know that we've discussed in the past and we've, we've said that we don't expect it to operate commercially overall, but I do think that it says to us or triggers the whole, what is the strategy for the Muni, from a income generating perspective and what does asset management look like for them long term as well. So it's a good reminder. Yeah.
So those are the proposed amendments. Do we support that list?
I suppose too, it's just going to be that first slide that Alistair put up. It's good to see that we are still maintaining and compliant with our revenue financing policy for most of our activities. So there's not a lot that we are proposing changes to, and those that we are relate to non-rates, increasing the non-rates policy bands.
We're going to commercialisation.
Anything else you want
Well, that last slide is just the bunch of stuff which are outside of policy, which we aren't proposing amendments for at this stage. So just really listing some of that stuff there. Part two, eyesight, in the commercial areas we're underway with their kind of transformation. Faraday as well, we'll figure out where that takes us. That just actually needs to be included in our policy. It wasn't there as a standalone item previously. So, I suppose just seeking some thoughts on those proposed amendments. As I say, most of them are actually increasing the user charges aspect of funding, not the rate cut.
Yeah.
All right, short and sweet.
That was very good, Alistair.
Yeah.
Well done. There's a bit of working behind that, team.
Hell yeah.
That's the other thing too, is that Alice has been doing a huge amount of work in that space over, I don't know, the last little while. But what we're finding is it's good getting a bit of comfort to see that we are actually tracking along reasonably close, because that was one of the big concerns that we had sort of during the last revenue and financing policy review. With all the stuff that had gone on, we're getting these variances, but we weren't sure if they were sort of temporary or fundamental changes. And so to do this work on a regular basis now gives us a bit of comfort that things do look about right.
Because we address it every year, we check it. When we can, we update it. And our budgeting and planning tries to meet these targets.
Just a quick question on
Yep.
When we know about the commercialisation, I mean, when are we sort of aiming for to get a commercialisation?
I mean, we have an update coming up from council on those activities. We're still understanding what that forward forecast view is looking like. Work in progress.
Do we know how much it's losing, like, at the moment?
We do. These are the current percentages that we're achieving this year. So you can see we're getting Ocean Spa is getting about 55% cost recovery at the moment. Obviously, the target's to get 100%, so we're trying to understand that business a bit more. Napier Conference and Events is doing a little bit better, and Kennedy Park's probably the best out of three, but we're still understanding businesses. We're trying to optimise running of them.
So probably the last part is just the work we've got ahead of us.
I like the we. This is
yes, it's not the royal weeds. So after today's workshop, there's opportunity to provide a bit more feedback and direction around that too. But we'll start to get into a bit of modelling to have a look at what some of these changes could look like if we bring them in. And obviously, with the elections coming up, we'll provide some recommendations, which will then be carried over to new council, and then the good work continues. So really where the rubber starts to hit the road for us is December into February, where we start to look at what is it that we're looking to consider, what are the options, and that the consultation, what will we put to the public, discuss. So, heck of a lot of work.
Juliet, the answer to your question is the 31st of July.
So, are there any questions around schedule at all? No? That's essentially it. Been a great.
Thank you.
No. Half an hour really, overachieved.
There's a lot of stuff in there which many of you have been through before and didn't want to sort of go through it in too much detail, but we're here if you do have any questions. But really it's just a sort of bit of a refresher, cover up on those issues again and just discuss the next steps. So yes, is there anything else or are you guys all good to finish?
Yeah, we're finishing with our tea, Kate.
All good.
Tom?
Thank you.
Cool.
I must say it's much easier to.
Lovely season.
I know.
He's talking the three waters. That's going to come in.
It is.
Thanks, Steve.
Really.